Homework number 11. All right. This is graphing parabolas. Now here, instead of y equals mx plus b form, you want it really ax squared plus bx plus c. In other words, you want an x squared term, you want an x term, and you want just a plain numerical term. Now the first thing you need to do with one of these things is when you graph a parabola, is to figure out the turning point. And assuming you have it in this form, you need to get into this form first. The turning point is x equals negative b over 2a, where a is the coefficient of the x squared, b is the coefficient of the x, and c, well, there is no c in this formula, but like in the quadratic formula, it was the constant term. So in this case, our formula is negative b, which is negative 4, which is positive 4, divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. So our turning point is where x is 1. Now, instead of just the 3 points, when I do these sorts of things, I like to make 7 points. You could probably get away with 5, but I like to do 7. It's a little cleaner. So for my little charts over here, unfortunately, you can't just do it the quick way like we did in homework 9. You have to really do it this way unless you have a calculator that does it for you, but I don't want you to use a calculator that does it for you. I want you to do it by yourself, at least the first few times. Let's write in the formula whatever y equals, which in this case is 2x squared minus 4x minus 2. Now, the turning point should be your fourth point. Let's make this a 1, and let's go up and down from 1 in all directions. So in this direction, let's say 0, negative 1, negative 2. In this direction, we'll say 2, 3, and 4. And for each one, plug in the x terms for whatever this value is, and then you'll figure out the y. Okay, so let's plug in this, and I'll do this in my head. Negative 2 squared is 4, so that the whole term is 2 times 4, which is 8. 8 minus, well, this is negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8, so that's 8 plus 8, which is 16, minus 2 is 14. Now let's try the negative 1. 2 times negative 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1 minus 2. This becomes positive 1, so this whole term becomes 2. This becomes positive 4, so this becomes 2 plus 4, which is 6, minus 2 is back to 4. Now let's try 0. Of course, this term becomes 0 because anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Everything becomes 0 except for the negative 2, so that becomes negative 2. Now let's try the 1. Now we got 2 times 1 minus 4 times 1 minus 2. 2 minus 4 minus 2 is, well, that should be negative 4. Then we got, let's do it 2 steps at a time. 2 squared is 4, so that's 2 times 4. Minus 4 times 2 minus 2. So we've got 8 minus 8 minus 2, negative 2. Now we've got 2 times 3 squared, which is 9, minus 4 times 3 minus 2. So we've got 18 minus 12 minus 2 is 4. And then you've got 2 times 4 squared, which is 16, minus 4 times 4, which is also 16. Okay, so we'll make that into 16 minus 2. So 2 times 16 is 32, minus 16 minus 2 is 14. Notice, of course, that if you do this properly, it should go up uniformly. Everything on the opposite sides of the turning points should be equal to each other. And to graph this, just plot the points. You can plot the turning point first. So our turning point is 1, negative 4. Remember, the turning point was where x was. So x was at 1. Then we've got 0, negative 2. And then we've also got 2, negative 2. Notice it's always going to be like a U shape or an upside down U shape, depending on whether this first term is positive or negative. We had negative 1, positive 4, that's up here. And we also had 3, positive 4, which was up here. Then we had 4, 14, which 1, 2, 3, 4. Somewhere up here. I don't know exactly, but somewhere up here, somewhere up here. And then you can draw a nice little U shape. Okay, not the perfect drawing, but hopefully you get the idea. right, let us get rid of this and get rid of that little black dot in the interim. Get a new graph paper and go on to question number 2. Let's use green this time. Here, we have to isolate the y first. That's the problem. The problem is in order for this to work, in order for you to easily be able to graph it, you could graph it like this, but it would be much, much harder. So let's isolate the y, and of course the way we isolate the y first is by adding 4y to each side. So let's put 4y on one side, and then on the other side we still have our x squared minus 2x plus 9. Now let us divide each side by 4. Divide every term by 4. All right. So we've got y equals 1/4 x, and I'm going to say 0.25x, minus, well, it's negative a half, so I'll say 0.5x, plus 9/4, I'll say 2.25. Again, it's just a little easier when you use the decimals. Okay, what is our turning point? Well, let's see. The turning point is x equals negative b over 2a. Negative b is negative 0.5, which is positive 0.5, divided by 2 times 0.25, which is also positive 0.5, and anything over itself is 1. So once again, just like the previous example, we have our turning point as 1. All right. So once we know our turning point is 1, let's make our chart. All right. So what is our chart going to be? We know that it is 0.25x squared. I didn't put that over there, but okay, that shouldn't matter. Minus 0.5x plus 2 1/4. And we have a 1 over here, so let's put, again, 0, -1, -2 up here, and 2, 3, 4 over here. All right. Let's try -2 first. -2 squared is positive 4, and 0.25, or a quarter of 4, is 1. Minus 0.5 minus a half of -2, so that's a minus times a minus, so it's a positive, and 2 times a half is also 1, plus 2.25. So we've got 1 plus 1 plus 2.25 is 4.25. Okay, now let's try the -1. -1 squared is, of course, positive 1. So it's 0.25 times positive 1, which is 0.25. Negative times a negative is a positive again. So negative 0.5 times -1 is positive 0.5 plus 2.25. So now we've got a quarter plus a half, which is 3/4. 3/4 plus 2 1/4 is 3. Now we go to the 0, so this is easy, 0 and 0, and this becomes 0.25, 2.25, excuse me. So that's 2.25. All right, now let's try the positives. Let's try the 1. This is going to be our turning point. 1 squared is 1, so that's 0.25 stays by itself, minus 0.5 plus 2.25. Okay. A quarter minus a half is negative a quarter. Negative a quarter plus 2 1/4 is 2. Hopefully you figured out why that is, because again, that's the same thing as 2 1/4 minus a quarter. Now let's try further up. 2 squared is 4. Quarter of 4 is 1. Negative 0.5 times 2 is 1 also, so that's -1. Plus 2.25. Of course, 1 minus 1 is 0, so this becomes 2.25. And again, notice it's symmetrical. This is the same as the 0. And let's try the 3. 9, x squared is 9. 9 times a quarter is 9/4, and 9/4 is 2.25. Negative a half, negative 0.5 times 3 is negative 1.5. Plus 2.25. 2 1/4 minus 1.5 is 3/4. 3/4 plus 2 1/4 is 3. And then finally 4. 4 squared is 16. 0.25 times 16 is 1/4 of 16, which is 4. Negative a half of 4, which is negative 2, plus 2.25. So that's 2 plus 2 1/4 is 4.25. And of course, you can see that it is the same on either side of the turning point. So our turning point is 1, 2. That's this point. Then we've got 0, 2.25, which is something like this. And we've got 2, 2.25, which is something like this. Then we've got 3, 3, and negative 1, 3. And then on the edges, we've got negative 2, 4 1/4, and 4, 4 1/4. So this parabola is going to look a little flatter than our previous one, but it is still going to be U-shaped. And that is what our parabola looks like. And finally, let us look at number 3. I will, let me just try to get rid of this whole thing over here and stick this in back here. And let's look at number 3. Number 3, let's try a third color. Same idea, we have to isolate the y. How do you isolate the y? Well, you get rid of everything else. Get rid of the 3x squared term. Okay, and take the 3x squared to this side. So you've got negative 3y equals negative 3x squared term. We're going to take the x squared term first, and the 12x and the 9 will stay. Now, in order to isolate the y, we have to divide by whatever's next to y, which is negative 3, and we're going to do the same thing to all the rest of them, to this and to this. So this, of course, cancels, and we've got a y. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 cancels also. And you get plain x squared. 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4x. And 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. So this is our equation. And for that, we're going to figure out the turning point. Negative b over 2a. Negative b is negative 4, which is positive 4, divided by 2 times 1. That's the coefficient of the x squared, which is 2. And so our x is 2. So here, when we draw our chart, we're going to do our 2 in the middle. So we'll do a 3, 4, 5, and then we'll do a 1, 0, negative 1. Our equation was x squared minus 4x minus 3. So let's plug it in. X negative 1 squared, positive 1. Negative 4 times negative 1, positive 4. Minus 3. So 1 plus 4 is 5, minus 3 is 2. Okay, that's our first point. 0, of course, that's 0, that's negative 3. Let's take the 1. 1 squared is 1, minus 4 times 1 is negative 4. So we've got 1 minus 4 minus 3, which is negative 6. And then we've got 2 squared, which is 4, minus 8 minus 3. So now we've got 4 minus 8, which is negative 4, minus 3 is negative 7. Now let's try the 3. 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times 3, which is 12, minus 3, which is negative 6, of course, just like the other side. 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times 4, which is also 16, minus 3. 16's cancel, and we got negative 3. And finally, in number 5, we've got 25, minus 4 times 5, which is 20, minus 3, which is 25 minus 20 is 5, minus 3 is 2. So here are our points. Negative 1, 2. Whoops, wrong side. Okay. 0, negative 3. That's our y-intercept. 1, negative 6. That's here. 2, -7, that's here, and now we climb back up because we're at the turning point. 3, -6, 4, -3, and 5, 2. And we draw this. Again, freehand, it's not that easy, especially when you're working on a tablet. But this should be approximately what our parabola, which means our quadratic equation graphed, looks like.